Hey, how you doing? Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your Sensei Al Bob. And I haven't been around because I have no cash, and I can't put nothing in the car, nothing in my tummy. But I did go to Thailand. Here I am in Thailand, and my laptop, I haven't rebooted it forever, so I need to do that. That took some time. I like the new hair gel, the Albert Einstein one. So, who owns you? Who you put on this earth to be the decider. You were given a free will. But man, you are so easily distracted, so easily led. Hey there, Miss Jane. And you just watch what's going on in the world, and it's like, really? And pretty much nothing is hidden, And so in 1980-89, I was out. I went to Brazil to build a discotheque for Java the Hutt in a place called Buzios. I'll tell you that in a second or two. But I haven't done a show. My neighbor has had people in his house for the last few days, so I haven't been able to go on his porch. And I couldn't go any place until I had a bunch of places to go. I can't just go one place. So anyway, that's the kind of but I'm having a good time basically. I kind of cleared out my made a nice little meditation space in the deep green, and it's very comfy. VR News in I'll be right back.
This is Fresh Air, and our guest is Tim Miller. He's a former Republican communications staffer. His new book is about how the Republican Party came to embrace Donald Trump and, to some extent, his own role, that is to say, Tim Miller's own role, in creating the climate that enables Trump's rise. His book is called Why We Did It, a travelogue from the Republican Rights Wall. The second half of your book is based on interviews that you did with people who worked in the Trump administration or supported him. In a lot of cases, people that you knew. You wanted to figure out why did they do this? People who, by and large, didn't really believe in Donald Trump. And a lot of the reasons that you give are things that we would expect: power and ambition, access to the game, fame, all that stuff. But one of the things you said that surprised you in terms of people's willingness to support Trump was hostility and hatred of the left. What surprised you there?
I started doing these interviews with only people who I knew better, right? Friends of mine who had told me they didn't like Trump at some point over history. And so I thought they were much more interesting than, we know that Stephen Miller hates the left, right? You know that there are all these, there's a handful of sociopaths, a handful of bigots, a handful of idiots that work for Donald Trump. I didn't find any of those people interesting. This book is about the people who made that even run along anyway. And so that's why I was surprised when repeatedly gentle people that I knew to be, volunteers in their community, and people who I did not think of as jerks, right? Would after a couple of years in them, and then they would start ranting to me about how mad they are, and the Never Trumpers and the Lincoln Project and the Bulwark and the media, and how the media is out to get them, and how woke culture is out to get them, and how their wife's friend called them a racist at a dinner party, and this was repetitive in many of the conversations that were on background, and then my friend Caroline, who I am with, said this to me on the record. I asked her, at the end, what was it she liked about Trump, and she literally said, I actually think it's all negative. I'm just so sick of the people with their Priuses and their coexist stickers, drinking their coffee culottes and wagging their finger at me. And so it's preposterous. Like, I don't, she mentioned plastic straw, paper straws. It's like, I don't like paper straws. Donald Trump over. What I realized was in this DC culture that I'm now separate from, having been cast out of the party, that is at dinner parties, that is what they do to comfort themselves. Right? They talk about all the things that made them mad about the left, and they have this deep-seated anger and hatred towards the left and towards Obama and towards the media that I never really had. I was playing this game the whole time, which had some problems, as we've been discussing. They were developing a real life anger that allowed them to justify working for somebody they knew was dangerous.
One rationalization for Donald Trump that you were pretty dismissive of is the argument of a lot of people who took jobs in the Trump administration that, look, it's the government, somebody needs to run it competently. We need grown-ups, somebody who can, prevent some of the worst stuff from happening. And, people look at the January 6th committee hearings and you see, some of these lawyers like, Eric Hirschman and even Pat Malone, who in critical moments from Trump down to seize voting machines and appoint Jeffrey Clark Attorney General, put their feet there. What about that argument? I mean, in some cases, people there made a difference.
Yeah, we can do a whole 2 hours about this, and if people want to hear this debate back and forth, I have a full chapter with Alyssa Farah, who is the communications director for Trump, and who took that job reluctantly, and now has gone full anti-Trump based on his behavior after the election, and we this question back and forth. In short, my view is that anybody who really thought they went in to quote-unquote save the country, there was this group called the Committee to Save America, which was John Kelly et al., who said they were, we need responsible people in here. We don't like this guy, but we need good people. None of the members of the quote-unquote Committee to Save America tried to save America when there were only two choices on the ballot, Joe Biden and Donald Trump. None of them endorsed Joe Biden. I worked for a group called Republican Voters Against Trump, where we recruited people to make videos opposing Donald Trump, and we recruited a couple from the Trump administration. You might remember Olivia Troy, Elizabeth Newman, and we made ads with them. But these are mid-level operatives. Not to degrade them. I thought they should make courage. But none of the top-level people did. And so my point is, if that was really your reason to go in, that you cared about this country so much that we needed good public servants, then you would have spoken truth about what you saw before the election. When you had a chance, we had a very close election. Not just for Trumpers, I think you think, but we had a close election, and we needed every voice possible to speak out in order to try to stop him. And I think that's what was revealing is that all these people who said that they went in, because they were going to be the ones that protected the country, that was actually just slandering themselves, right? Like that was the story that they told themselves to justify going in. That in the end, they really were attracted to some of these more base reasons for going in, access to power, ambition, etc.
I agree that the discussion with Alyssa Farah Griffin is interesting. And in the book, she gives you a list of things that she said she did inside which made a difference. Directly talked the president out of firing Mark Esper twice, convinced him not to use racist birther attack on Kamala Harris when others pushed for it, pushed him not to replace Dr. Birx with Scott Atlas in the COVID task force. What about that? I mean, I guess
save stars and stripes even. Somehow, you can mention the defendants leave, the Twitter shuts down Stars and Fred Magazine.
And what she says, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what she says, Tim, is, your argument that you should leave, that the responsible people should not have gone in, it is essentially a let it burn argument that, if that's what people voted for, then let's get the worst government that Donald Trump can give us, and people will see what it's really made of, and will come to a reckoning. Is she right?
That's kind of my argument. If something is said to matters or not, and we're still dealing with Donald Trump in 2022. Right? Might have had people like Alyssa not been protecting him from his worst impulses. Might there have been 17 Republicans who had the courage to vote to impeach him the second time, so we would have been done with him. Might the election in 2020 not have been quite as close. If they would have, the voters would have seen what they voted in a little more clearly. I don't know. These are counterfactuals. I don't think it's a clear question. But I do reject the notion that it's up to some mid-level staffer to be the one to save the country from itself. I think that there are responsible career people who should have gone in and did their jobs. I think in national security, I would say give HR McMaster for people keeping Trump from pushing the button, a pass. But I think this justification was, like I said, flattering to a lot of people in Washington who had a lot of other reasons for going in. I don't know if saving Stars and Stripes magazine was worth risking Donald Trump getting a second term over. I really put on this. I just do want to say that if there's any hope in the story, it's her. And we go very deep and it gets very emotional on why she decided to, at the end, say no, finally speak out and say, I cannot do this any longer, and stick with it, which she was committed to doing, different than Bill Barr. And it was that she started telling herself a different story. She started saying, okay, well, as much as I thought I could save the country, clearly I can't anymore, given the lead after the election. And now I start thinking, what are my kids going to think if I am complicit in this riot at the Capitol? What is my in-laws going to think about me? And I think that's interesting. And she does offer a way out for those people who had these rationalizations that became no longer operative after January 6th. And I think that in a lot of ways she's similar to a lot of people who are acting a lot worse than her right now. And I'm hoping that her story can maybe be a little bit of an off-ramp for certain folks as we unfortunately look ahead at maybe coming to deal with this monster one more time.
Tim Miller, thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks, Dave.
Tim Miller is a former Republican communications staffer who is now an analyst for MSNBC and a writer at large for TheBluework.com. His new book is Why We Did It, a travelogue from the Republican Road to Hell. On tomorrow's show, we talk with comedian Mo Amer. He's a Palestinian whose family fled the first Gulf War, so he grew up in Houston from age 9. He speaks Arabic, Spanish, and the kind of English that puts Texans at ease. He's done 2 Netflix comedy specials. He stars in a new Netflix series based on his life called Mo. I hope you can join us. Freshers executive producer is Jamie Miller. Our technical director and engineer is Audrey Fenton. We have additional engineering help from Adam Stanishevsky. Our interviews and reviews are produced and edited by Amy Salad, Phyllis Myers, Sam Bridger, Lauren Wenzel, Ivy Simon, Teresa Maddox, and Marie Baldonado, David Challoner, Seth Kelly, and Susan Bishop. Our visual media producer is Molly C. Nesper. The Show Rock Direction Show. Jerry Gross, and Dave Davis.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Ooma, a cloud-based phone service for businesses of any size that comes with an automated virtual receptionist, video meetings, and mobility features to connect customers and coworkers anywhere. More at ooma.com. And from the NPR Wine Club, bringing the wine world to people's homes with wines inspired by NPR like Tiny Desk Chardonnay. Available to adults 21 or older. More at nprwineclub.org.
State Museum, hosting a Great Smoky Mountain Railroad excursion along North Carolina's Tuckasegee River. Train departs from Bryson City with a stop in Dillsboro. This fall-colored day trip includes bus transportation from Johnson City. Reservation deadline is September 22nd. ntsu.edu/railroad. Coming to the campus of East Tennessee State University, this is WETS HD1 and WETS FM, Johnson City, Tennessee. Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. One thing about Appalachians.
As far as fresh pizza, I mean, I would say we're like number one because you don't have to prepare it until you get here. Well, how about that? Our first time entering and we got second place. That's a pretty good deal. It wasn't an option. It was just what we did.
Meanwhile, 1,000-year floods have devastated Eastern Kentucky. People there are just beginning to rebuild.
To recover and
The environmental disasters of today inspire Alice Science novels about Appalachia's dystopian future.
I think of my novels to trash them as almost a little bit. It's a little more extreme.
These stories and more this week inside Appalachia. First, the steps. Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Stewart. President Trump is asking a federal court to appoint a neutral special master to review the documents seized by the FBI of Mar-a-Lago this month. Trump also is lashing out at the Justice Department over the sources we hear from NPR's Ryan Lucas. A motion filed in federal court in Florida. Trump's attorneys want the Justice Department to be prevented from reviewing the materials seized at Mar-a-Lago until a special master can be appointed. They also want the government to provide a more detailed inventory of what the FBI recovered during their court-authorized search. According to documents already made public, agents found secret and top secret documents in the search, although the property receipt does not provide details on them or the other items that were found. A spokesperson for the Justice Department says the government is aware of Trump's motion and that it will file its response in court. Ryan Lucas of Bear News, Washington. After more than 35 years as director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, Dr. Anthony Fauci says he plans to step down at year's end. He's also quoting as President Biden's chief medical advisor. Selena Simmons-Duffin takes a look back at Fauci's career.
A grandson of Italian immigrants raised in Midland, Anthony Fauci trained as a physician before going to NIH to study infectious diseases. He first came into the public sphere during the early years of the HIV/AIDS crisis. Gay activists fighting for faster development of treatments, found a willing ear and collaborator in Fauci. In more recent years, he's become a key figure in the federal response to the COVID-19 pandemic, beloved by some and vilified by others. Even though he's 81 years old, he says he's not exactly retiring, just starting a new chapter of his career outside of government service. Selena Simmons-Duffin, NPR News.
COVID booster shots are a step closer to arriving this fall. The company Pfizer says it's asking the Food and Drug Administration to authorize an updated vaccine after it's been wrong before.
Pfizer is the first company to submit data on booster shots that target the currently dominant COVID variants. Right now, more than 90% of the current US cases are caused by BA4 and BA5. Those are subvariants of the income strain that affect the summer. If the updated shots are authorized by the FDA, they could be available in the fall. Pfizer and Canada submitted the vaccine data to FDA in a press release, but they did not show privacy benefit data there. The FDA will be reviewing its known about the safety and efficacy of the updated shots. Health officials have said an updated booster shot could better protect people against potential fall and winter surges.
NPR News devoting $20 billion semiconductor plant being built by Intel near Columbus, Ohio, promises to be a major economic engine for the state. However, Intel says it is having difficulty finding 7,000 construction workers needed. Now is out 633 points. This is NPR. The Saints will vote in Kansas in favor to the state constitution that would allow the GOP-controlled legislature to either restrict abortion or ban it. The measure fell by 18 percentage points, or around 165,000 votes. Fire crews have now fully contained New Mexico's largest recorded wildfire. As Bryce Dixon member station KUNM reports, the fire left not only the ash of trees and homes in its wake, but also a broken community. Intensity rains and a full dose of treatment from California. Fire is firefighting is confident it's flowing. The residents of Fort Worth remain safe. Everything's on their minutes.
Sound including trials of the fire in Shell started 2 days ago.
Rita Moss and her husband lost their house and 2 art studios. Like she's dealing with an insurance dispute that mainly covered less money than she was hoping for to rebuild her life. The U.S. Forest Service has taken full responsibility for stopping the fire, which scorched the kids that lived in 20,000 acres in New Mexico. European News, I'm Bryce Dixon. Record heating and brush fires are causing evacuations in southwest China. There was also power rationing taking place for weeks for factories amid the ongoing drought. Some factories have been told they need to shut down to at least Thursday due to low water levels of hydroelectric dams. This decision is adding to problems already being faced by China's ruling Communist Party. I'm Jack Spear, NPR News.
Russians held the suburbs of Kherson, in the south, complete.
Progressive Insurance, where drivers can compare direct rates using Progressive's rate comparison tool at progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. Appalachians love to compete. Whether it's redneck softball, a turkey calling contest, workplace chili kickoffs, mountain goats are in it to win. But there's more to competition. Later on the show, former competitors who are keepers of beloved Appalachian traditions. Well, first, let's head to Eastern Kentucky. As we record the show this week, residents there are reeling. Between 14 and 16 inches of rain fell in Eastern Kentucky over 4 days in late July, causing 1,000-year floods. At least 37 people are dead, and hundreds of homes and businesses destroyed. Katie Myers with the Ohio Valley Resource reports from Whitesburg, Kentucky, where people are rebuilding, mourning, trying to support their neighbors.
In the parlor room, a longtime tattoo shop and music venue, all covered walls meet a third floor covered in mud. Rows of sketchbooks with the tattoo artist drawings sit drying beneath the fan. John Fletcher works there.
The water pressure, first of all, is wide open. As far as, loss of stuff, it could have been so much worse.
The mud takes the streets of Whitesburg. It's on everything. Shoes, cars, furniture piled outside of stores and houses. It looks just into the air, making this humid place feel like a desert town. Fire chief Fred Fowler says they couldn't get mud off the streets. There's not enough water in the city tanks, and they're trying to conserve it.
The water, especially to spray mud out and that sort of thing. So we're going to have a tough time keeping the tanks full. We've got to get the mud out. Just for health reasons, nothing else.
The city's moving water to pipe leaks, which officials are working to fix. And the water is not currently safe to drink, if it's working at all.
The boil water advisory does stand in effect, and it will be quite some time before that's released.
And then, of course, there's Apple Shop. That's where I work. It's where, for decades, WMMT 88.7 FM broadcasts out to the world. The voice of mountain people, as we say, Possum Radio. The microphones and computers are piled against the window. The mud covers them. The bottom floor of the building is unusable right now, says Meredith Stiles, the communications director. We are simply focused on the initial phases of recovery right now. Our highest priority being archival recovery. Apple Shop is home to decades worth of local history in film and audio reels, as well as books, posters, and art. Staff are salvaging what they can, but the work is backbreaking and tedious. Gently mixing mud from spools and spools of film in hopes of saving at least some of it. This is going to take weeks, months, years to recover, and from all the girls I already got. In the very uncrowded library, dusty footprints led to the computers, to the coffee pot, to the front desk. We were open today in Lynchburg, and yesterday offering coffee and a place to just hang out, charge your phone. People are exhausted, walking in to sit for a minute, or just to talk with Alita Vogel, the head librarian. Sometimes she gives them a hug. It doesn't feel like a lot, but it's what we can do. The widespread branch came out unscathed, but Vogel says libraries in smaller towns haven't closed so well. I don't know how long it's going to be before you and Rocky can open back up. I'll probably put on some boots and some grungy clothes and help clear out as much as I can. Outside, the mud cleans from military with Jody Holbrook's shoes as he makes his way through town. Everybody knows him from his usual route on Main Street.
We've got 3 carriers, so the other 2 carriers, one of them can't get here, and the other one, from what I understand, he lost everything he had, nobody's even heard from him.
Holbrook knows a lot of people in this town. The parlor room, the library, apple shop, the apartments, he visits them all. But the post office flooded too, and mail is piling up.
I mean, there's no way to describe what all piled up in there. I know we just can't believe it. I mean, a lot of my addresses are full up.
Holbrook turns away, looking back tears.
I full up from the absolute help. We'll make it of it.
For the Ohio Valley Resource, I'm Jenna Myers.
Didn't drive very far anywhere in Appalachia. Bouncing Woodville. Officials of the Great Smoky Mountains Association now have a new strategy for reducing wildlife deaths on North Carolina highways. Matt Hyken, Heritage Public Radio, has more. Frances Feiger slowly remembers words from her mother along drive-through trips through the countryside. Between the dead frogs, the mentality and she would say, I wish all my blessing never been invented. And that stuck in my mind. Over the years, as Feiger traveled the world as a magazine editor, she came to see animal deaths as a global problem. And as creative services director of the Great Smoky Mountains Association, Feiger saw a unique way to contribute to the effort of stemming those deaths in this region. Feiger is the author of A Search for Safe Passage, an illustrated paperback book written mainly for free cities. The story casts bears, deer, foxes, raccoons, turtles, woodchucks, and other wildlife as characters in a story of ever-present struggle, animal versus motor vehicle. The Great Smoky Mountains Association is the publisher. It occurred to me that if an 11-year-old is reading this book today, in another 11 years they're going to be graduating from college, and maybe they're going to have the wildlife engineering degree or the horticulture degree that's going to be part of what solves these problems. The development of the interstate highway system, 41,000 miles of coast-to-coast, border-to-border roadway, had a severe impact on the travel patterns of wildlife. I-40 is a death trap for a lot of wildlife, particularly in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, which is incredibly biologically diverse. Catherine Hunter is a senior program manager with the National Parks Conservation Association. She said animal deaths in this region were largely anecdotal until 2019. Since then, weekly driving surveys and 120 cameras along the 28-mile stretch of I-40 have put hard numbers behind the deaths. Hunter said officials reported 103 dead bears over 3 years. 7 wilderness and conservation groups are behind a coalition to stem those numbers. On one end, they're lobbying legislators to fund wildlife overpasses and culverts. On the other, they're appealing to drivers to slow down. I think the Safe Passage Collaborative is an example of how organizations with different cultures, different missions, different priorities can come together in common cause and solve a seemingly intractable issue. That's also the hope behind Feiger's book. No animals are struck or killed in the book. Instead, wildlife creatures seemingly with little in common form a forest council to steer one another to safe passage over and under roadways, and also keep an eye on how humans help or hurt their efforts. At first, I thought I wasn't the right person to do it. And then I thought about it and realized I was the perfect person to do it because I'm a writer that I don't know the science. I didn't have all those details in my head that would keep me logged in from kids. And so I was able to write
it from a very general perspective, that would be perfect for a public prayer. I did study fables and morality plans when I was an enrichment major, and it didn't come out that stuff came back inside when I started working in this. Franklin's commitment to the issue is so inspired, he went so far as to compose and record a song to cover the book. The actual band The Fates recorded it and made a video for Safe Passage, Animals Need a Hand. Animals need a hand. This ain't after the federal government recently set aside $350 million for wildlife management efforts around this issue, the competition for this money is stiff, with needs all over the country similar to those within the Great Smokies. Hunter said North Carolina is about to construct its first wildlife overpass, that's the Coa Gap, where the Appalachian Trail crosses State Highway 143. Frankfurt lives just over the North Carolina state line in Flat Pond, Tennessee. She said her work around this issue is far from over. This is, for me, a great service to be able to connect myself to something that I'm passionate about, make it a part of my job, and make a difference. I'd like to say in collaboration with the foundation of the world, and I think you've got a lot of value that we have certainly got really understand. A search for safe passage is already found its way into the hands of fifth graders in Mansfield and
I'm back.
some of those students who have a slow reason.
So, I don't know who's there. Anybody? No. James, probably. Everyone's left. I just wanted to hold the space for a while. Went outside and talked to the boys. And, you have to respect other people so you don't just drag the cadre into the other conversation. Though you might have found it interesting. All these old guys going on and on about anime. I'll be right back. They got their AC cranked up for the crowd. The crowd hasn't shown up yet. Well, here we are in Thailand, out here in the middle of nowhere, cracker country. And that's the beautifulness of America. I mean, everyone loves this family. This food is amazing. And, it's not like KFC or Taco Bell. And that's what's taken over here. We were just musing over all the country stores and country restaurants that were here when I got here 20 years ago, and they're all gone. And they've all been taken over by KFC and Taco Bell and McDonald's and Dollar General took over all the general stores. And so all of the holler businesses employed hundreds of people. The 6 general stores I knew, each had maybe 10 people in their family working there and another 10 people. 20 people a store. Now, the Dollar General stores are truly amazing. They're totally robotized. And all of their, aisles of stuff are on casters. And when everything gets sold, and all the people on the shelves, all they do is kind of move the stuff up closer and on other shelves. But once everything goes out of that shelf, and they know exactly when they're going to run out of stuff, the big Dollar General truck comes, and these shelves on casters and have little electric motors, and they roll the store that goes right in the store. First, the empty shelves roll out, and the ones that are full of stuff roll in, so they don't even need people to put stuff on the shelves. So each Dollar General has maybe 6 people working, right? 1 general manager, 3 next kind of managers, shift managers, and then about another 6 or 7 people who work it. Right? But there's never more than 2 people in the store, and that's all gone. I mean, all of the holler culture and holler business that employed at least 300 or 400 people in my corner of the county. Now it employs maybe 30 people, and most of them aren't even from my corner of the county. Because my corner of the county has basically died off. They were killed, between when I got here, this was an amazing, diverse community of farms that grew everything. And then Manmead and Bear and Monsanto moved in and bought up all the big land and put genetically engineered, and all they had was cattle feed, tobacco, soybeans, Christmas trees. That's it. Right? And we just spray everything. Right? And it's killed the land. Right? Like poison the water. And so, and then they went after all the smaller farms, saying that their genetically seed had blown into their farm, and so that food that was growing in their property was theirs, and they owned the property. And they, in 20 years, they took over everything. And we have the best legislators money can buy, and they kind of took it over, right? And paid off our Chamber of Commerce, who were the guys who constantly cycled through the county commissioner and the chief of police and the mayor of the city. And so it's like Andy's, little town of Mayfair or Mayville or whatever it's called. There's actually a city in North Carolina that has the highest level of OxyContin death in that part of North Carolina. And the crime and the sorrow and all the rest is, and the major 2 things that facilitated that was the big box stores sold it out of their pharmacies. So, it's a world that, unless you love yourself and love your family and love your neighbor, you're going to have a pretty screwed up world, and that's what we have right now. And this guy named Miller, Fresh Air with Terry Gross, a great show. Go on her website and look at her shows. And they just had a guy named Miller who was a guy, observation research. That's a guy who looks at what the other, it's a political, and I used to do, I didn't do this per se, I was a guy who looked at trends and I looked at strategists, right? So I would work for guys who were political strategists, right? And I would make insights. You know, they were looking at how to win this election or X, Y, Z, and I was looking at the bigger picture. And so they liked my perspective of things, so they let it, you know, be, and I had access to what they were doing. And again, it was just like I do this show. I was pumping in shamanic juice on the side of wanting to make things work. And, you know, be well, co-creation. And I had my little pebble dynamic influence. And there are lots of other people doing what they do. And that's why the guys who run this place, they do it. I mean, they put love in everything they make. And they are really great because they're 100% Thai and 100% American. It's like really, it's really lovely to watch. And, you know, that's
Price is Right, the news, the other races, all the beautiful, Debbie Walker.
but who is bold and who is beautiful?
Right.
It's like throwing.
The eyes of the beholder.
It's like throwing the dice. Because we all can be beautiful and we can all be bold and we can also be.
That's right.
The thing is, just do your best. I love this place. It's just full of Americana and Thai culture.
Right?
The guy Vega, along with what's his name? Art. Are you guys from this neck of the woods?
Yes.
You grew up here?
It's on the other side of the lake.
You grew up here?
No, I'm actually from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Oh, so how long you been in this neck of the woods?
Going on 5 years.
Going on 5 years. So you retired, or you got this is just your getaway place?
We have our, we own a business down here. We have a little campground.
Oh, glamping?
And
No, just camping.
yeah, people's own campers. They just have a little space for
Oh,
my own
pop-ups?
place. No, regular campers.
Like RVs?
But yeah.
You're in an RV park.
Yes. Yeah. But for permanent residents, not for
Oh, where is that?
transient.
On the.
It's on the opposite side of the lake. It's next to Pioneer Landing,
Oh,
but
that's-
it's not. It's down a little bit. It's very small.
It's is it on Greg's Branch or Dry Run?
It's on Canyon Town,
So you're up near where those guys?
Eagle Bay.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're near that. On the other side?
We're on the same. I'm driving to my house. You pass it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're
Unfortunately,
past
They
those.
weren't here.
You're well. I mean, to sell those lots without any water, septic, or electricity, it's like I really get a sense that they are laundering money. And that's what I think. It's like Banner Elk is a good example of that.
Yeah.
A mob
They're just
went in
tearing
there.
down the beautiful trees and just making.
Well, they're changing the water
Sad.
table. It's, I
And
mean,
they're not allowed to do that, and they just do it anyway.
Do it
They
anyway.
do what they want.
because this county has no building department, no inspectors, no nothing, which is okay. I like that. But when a large corporation comes in with millions of dollars and does that, it's one thing if little guys like you and I do that. It's not, even if we do something not so right, it's not a big deal. But when you do it on a scale that they,
Scale.
and the way they took off the top of that hill and then all of 167 just slid into the road.
Yeah. So did Cowantown.
Right. And then the county had to pay millions to get it, and those guys didn't pay a nickel.
It's taxpayer money paying for them.
I know. It's
It's wrong.
And that's because our Chamber of Commerce is totally owned by those guys.
Yeah, you would think the TVA
Now,
would say something to them that just for what they did with the water, you're not allowed to do it.
yeah, but see, our lake, Watoga, is so poisoned already. It's like when they going towards Hampton, they have a little beach, and they have it's like marked up. It's like a petri dish.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to swim in that thing. It's like,
I know.
it's like. I mean, I go to the point. You ever go to the point?
What?
You know, there's that thing, and then up the road towards us, there's a point.
Okay.
You know, and they have that nice bathroom, the nice covered thing, so the church can have a big lunch.
Oh yeah, yeah,
They have hibachis everywhere. Now that's nice.
yeah.
I mean, I sit on my grass and I bring my hammock and tie it on trees, and I cook myself up a nice piece of salmon, and
Yeah.
you know that was something well worth my tax dollars. But,
Right.
other stuff, and that was just like after they obliterated, Butler.
Oh yeah.
Did you ever talk to any folk who like,
Yeah.
you know,
Crazy
me
story.
and Grandma were just sitting on the porch, and then all of a sudden the water started. And then this guy from the crew comes, you got to get out. Here's $100. We'll buy your property. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
are you boat folks? Do you have place for boats on your
Yeah.
Right. So you must have your own boat, right?
Yeah.
So when the TVA lowers the lake, you ever go look at Old Butler? Have you ever done that?
Yes.
You see the high school and the movie?
Yeah. I went down. I went out with a friend of mine who showed me because he knew where everything was.
Right.
So it was nice to go with somebody.
Oh, who knows who's
who
from
knew
here? Yes,
everything
yes,
and was
yes.
able to
Point it out.
right they
Because
would show
that
us.
Butler was like 4 times bigger as the Butler that it is
Yeah.
today.
And another thing that I thought was really cool was the mountains that are underneath the water, and when the water drops, you're like, oh my.
Right.
What?
Well, that's why Watoga Lake has got such a big coastline, because it flooded a Sawtooth Mountain range. And so all of those, I mean, that water keeps going almost to Mountain City and up
Yeah.
towards
Yeah,
towards
it's-
Boone, you know?
It's really cool though to see that.
And that's why fishing around here is so good, because
I don't know. My son's been fishing for 4 years here, and he doesn't catch anything out of Lake Lugano.
well, that's, I used to live in the Caribbean and had a girlfriend who was a real sea woman. She was a pirate. She actually had a patch. I mean, she got in a fight and lost an eye. And, but she could catch fish like you couldn't believe. I mean, we would sit on the same seat. We'd throw, I'd never catch anything. She'd catch gigantic fish. I mean, it's, those fish can tell just by the energy on the end of the hook there.
Right.
So you came from Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
What part?
Pittsburgh.
I used to live in Germantown, near Philly.
Oh,
It's
maybe
a
on
sub-
the other end.
It's a suburb of Philly.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I never heard that.
It's a pretty.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
now
born and
big.
raised in Pittsburgh.
Yes. So you were not that far from 81,
81.
Interstate 81,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I'm quite. Yeah, and I actually lived in Ohio for a little bit too, right on the border.
Right,
so we were
right.
right there.
Right.
But most.
So did you consider yourself Appalachian?
No.
Because that is part of it.
Yeah, but we actually call they call it Appalachian down here.
Right.
And I've never heard of Appalachian. We call it Appalachian.
Right. Did you ever have, because where you are, they have cold cheese pizza? You ever have that?
No.
Never had that. That's real. What was that? Southeastern Ohio? Would you consider where you were?
No, I was right in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
I was like, here's Pennsylvania.
So you're
here's
northeast,
Ohio. I
right.
was like 4 miles.
Right.
over
So
the
it's a little further south. There, and it'd be more Appalachian. Cold cheese pizza is a pizza, but they put the cheese on after it comes out. So the cheese is cold.
Yeah.
Instead of melted. So you eat it, and it's actually amazing. I mean, it's so different because you really tell that it's cheese rather than melted gooey stuff,
Yeah.
right? And the crust gets crustier. It's a
Yeah,
bit-
we had French fries on our pizza.
Yes,
Or not on our salad.
yes, yes.
That was a big thing. You order a salad down here and you don't get French fries on it. You're like, what?
Yes, exactly. Ugh.
And taking away all of the
So come over here for a second, ma'am. Let's see your palm. The hand you write with.
My what?
You can put your drink down on the table for a second. The hand you write with, put it up like that. So you're a really honest girl. You can't lie with crap. Let's see, you're pretty even-tempered, though. You can like go like this, and then you let it go. Let's see, a lot of deja vu, big time deja vu. Turn your hand this way. You're a lot smarter than people. Like you're the better half of the business. You worry way too much. Stop worrying. There's no upside to worrying. And you're very empathetic. That's probably your best trait. When you see other people suffering, you can relate to it in that you were there too.
That's good. That's pretty much me.
That's pretty much it. Well, people go, "Oh, you're psychic." Pretty much the human species. You know why they have that thing called Mr. Potato Head? Well, that is humanity. There's only 8 of this, 8 of that. So there are 8 major lines. You've got 5,800 lines I can look at, but only 8 really matter. And this is how honest you are. Someone's like this, you know they're hiding something. Right? Someone's like this, that means they're good at not spilling the beans. They're still honest, but they don't spill the beans. You can tell them anything, and they're not going to tell anybody else. These 2 fingers, if they're really way out of sync, that's when someone's got a bad temper. So yours is kind of like mine, almost equal, but not. So you can get, but then you just kind of let it go. I mean, things can bother you, but you have a good enough perspective where it's not in your grill. You don't really let things get in your grill. Or get in your grill, meaning really get right in your face. Meaning you see it over there and you go, okay, and you get out of the way.
What's worry?
Worrying is like, so you have a business.
No, I meant.
Oh, the worry thing? Little dots on your fingernail. It's a vitamin deficiency. And worrying is a thing, along with a few other things, causes that. So,
Interesting.
yeah, and they're all very physical. They're not like woo-woo magic anything. I used to be a shrink, and people hate shrinks. And so that was my hook, right? I just let them think I'm going to go see my my circus freak, my I let them think of me as that,
Yeah.
because they were more happy with that than thinking that they had to go see a shrink. Yeah, people hate shrinks. And for good reason, because most of them are worthless.
Yeah.
I mean, they just,
I guess they think you're going to analyze them. But
that's
really, would you? I mean, I guess maybe at some point, but at the same point,
not really. No,
right, you don't analyze everybody and you don't ask them questions to get into their
I
business.
let them know. What I do is get people to talk about themselves.
Yeah.
And once they get it outside, then they can look at it instead of keeping it all stuck in. And that's what causes neuroses.
But it's like you don't bring your work home with you all the time, so it doesn't mean they're going to analyze everybody.
Right. No. And I'm not a big fan of doing that, because guys and gals who do that, all they do is put you in a box and then give you a drug. Me, I take the stuff out of you, let you look at it, and then we talk about it. You say stuff, I say stuff. So I'm not analyzing. I'm not a big analyzer. I mean, I know all of that stuff, but
And he doesn't analyze people when they first meet him anyway.
right, we all do.
You know pretty much within 5 minutes if you like somebody.
Yeah. Or you want to get it.
Especially nowadays with the way the world is,
But
you can tell pretty quick.
I was also a historian. I was all the ologists. And nothing has changed. Nothing's worse. In a lot of ways, I'm a lot older than you. I remember New York. I lived in New York City in 1970 when New York City went bankrupt. One day they had 30,000 police, and then the next they had 8,000. You know, when people, you have to defund the cops. You know, I experienced it. I mean, they didn't collect the garbage, they didn't mow the lawn. For 20 years, they didn't do that. And that has a lot to do with, thank you, Ronald Reagan. And the worst was Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton decontrolled everything.
Yeah.
You know, he was more of, you know, conservative Republican than Ronald Reagan was. Ronald Reagan was just in a trickle down kind of thing, and it trickled a little bit, but not much. People at the bottom weren't getting much of that trickle.
Right. Right.
You know? So I lived through that, and I was in my 20s when that was going on. And I didn't have any kids, didn't have any responsibilities. I knew New York really well. I grew up there. So in a lot of ways, it was great because there was no authority to tell you to do anything.
Yeah.
You could just, I mean, if we were going to hurt people, just want to go do something fun. I had a ton of restaurants, and I just opened. Never told the health department, the tax guy, anybody.
Right.
But it was in neighborhoods where there was no restaurant. People needed to eat. We just started these, I call them stone soup. Make it, you know, we had to bring some stone, we'll make soup.
Yeah.
So, and we had nightclubs and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. New York is a rough place to live, though.
It can be, and what you really have to be.
Taxes there.
Well, now, in those days there were no taxes. I mean, they had nobody to collect them.
They went so democratic there that they.
No. See, you have to realize, Democratic, Republican, two wings of the same corporate bird. We live in a corporate society,
Yeah.
and all they are buddies with each other. Behind the doors, Republicans and
Some are.
no, they all are. I used to work for them. I used to work for a thing called the Council on Foreign Relations, another thing called Trilateral Commission, another thing called the Club of Rome, another thing called the Federal Reserve, another thing called the United Nations. So I saw this all from the higher ups. And this has all been, and it's been this way since King and Church. You know, nothing has changed.
Yeah.
Because the general public is such gullible fools, they will go to, the Democrats. Well, you know what's really interesting? The Republicans used to be the liberal party.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
Rockefeller and all of those guys, they were the liberals. And the Democrats were the hard case, unbelievable racist, you know, the red
yeah.
dog.
And still are.
Well, they still are. Okay. Because nothing has changed. Nothing has changed, you know, and until people wake up to that. So I was in this town. I was a scholar at Cornell, upstate New York. Beautiful, beautiful country. All those Finger Lake. Did you ever go up there?
Yes. Beautiful.
Beautiful, right? And during the Ronald Reagan days, they wanted to turn all of that into nuclear waste dump. All that beautiful in the lakes and the worst place to put nuclear waste, right? And the federal government says, "Oh, we're going to do this," and the people like say, "What?" And they didn't roll over. And so the farmers went after the feds in their combines, and because the police and the highway patrol and those guys, that's Uncle Floyd. I'm not going to arrest Uncle Floyd. The federal government had to step back, and then the people at Cornell were smart guys, and so they basically seceded. The three counties seceded from the United States, right? And that's when we can tell that the United States is a corporate state, because we all guys said, "Fine, you don't want that? No gasoline for you. You like that? No cable TV for you. You like?" So they unplugged us. No banking, no credit card. We said, "Fine," and we traded. I'll babysit for you. You fix my car, and it worked out frigging amazing. And there were the Quakers. There are different flavors of Quakers, and some have cars and trucks, but they're
And the Amish.
but they are very down low on needing that kind of technology, right?
Yeah.
So they were already turning grass into alcohol to run their car on, right? And do you know why marijuana became illegal? Not because of black guys going after white girls. It's because it was the largest threat to gasoline.
gas.
Right. And the internal combustion engine and the diesel engine were both designed to run on hemp. Hemp was one of the largest products farmers made in America because we had no plastic. And Mr. Hearst with all that lumber who wanted to turn it into paper, which is the hardest thing to do. The amounts of chemicals you have to dump. Where hemp, you just add water, crush it, bingo, you have paper. So that's why marijuana became illegal, because they didn't. It's the only plant on Schedule 1. All the Schedule 1s are heroin, opium, you know,
But then why wouldn't they make it now?
because we live in a corporate state. Oil guys still, you know, it was truly amazing when you look, you know, the gross domestic product, right? Art makes more money, has a larger GDP than oil does, because oil is so subsidized by the federal government. You know, I mean, they could not exist unless your tax dollars paid them to do it, right? And so, but art makes more money for the general public, the gross domestic product, than oil does. So why marijuana was made illegal? Because it was the biggest threat to Mr. Rockefeller. And that is the big story in America. It's a corporate state. We are just slaves.
I got one.
Just slaves. So where'd your buddies go?
They're right there. Oh, I don't know.
No, they are right there. They're talking to, so did you eat something or get something to go? They're getting in the car.
We're gonna eat over there.
They're getting in the car. You gotta go. So I'll come by and visit. So you're past the rich people, right on the road?
Yes.
Okay, I'll come look for you.
All right, thank you. Bye.
So that's what I do. I talk to people like that. I talk to people like you. Right? And what time is it now? 1:44. How much juice? Oh, look at that. I better plug in. Ugh. Oh, charge up here. Oh. This is Asheville, North Carolina. And they took this down because they said it represented Southern white people. It's an obelisk. It kind of goes back to Babylon. And it's right in front of the big bank in, you know, the obelisk of the bank. It's kind of, you know, a metaphor towards Babylon bankers. Let's see. Oh, this is a big fancy cemetery where all the, you know, the 1920s authors, because actually it used to be the Paris of the South. It's a fancy cemetery up near my friends. Oh. And here's my place. I had a beautiful apartment right across from the Grove Park Inn. And it had 3 bedrooms, a living room, a dining room, a kitchen, bathroom, and a storage space downstairs, and 2 spaces in a garage, all for $175 a month, along with my electric and heating, right? So that's what my place looked like at night. Here I am at 50. That's what I look like at 50. This is when I was had to clean up for teaching. And here's the 2 Alberts together. It's at my writing desk. Here's one of my sweeties. She was a nurse at EMT. Here's a buddy of mine. He was a playwright at UNCA. Used to put plays on there. I brought him up to when I had my little project assuading the OGs of Bloody Madison not to attack the feds. Here's our little art gallery. We had a kind of warehouse art gallery. We had one down on the river, and we had one up almost smack in the middle of town. And this one was the one smack in the middle of town. And this guy was Haig. Oh, here's Vincent Moron. And he's the guy, he made his millions in New York City, the ticket trial. Then he came to Roanoke to try and weasel his way into, he wanted to pick up where Julian Price was doing his thing. So he was going to take over the Black Theater, which he did eventually. And it was called, I forget what they call that place. It's right in the main drag, but it was like historically an old, Chitlin Circuit place. And the Black Book had gotten $1 million of money, and he was just going to take it and turn it into what he wanted to turn it into as a white. And the theater, we were going to have an 1,800, it was an 1,800 seat theater, which you can make money at. He wanted to turn it into a 300 seat, but you couldn't make money. So he would just, so anyway, I was a New Yorker. He knew me because I worked for George and George. So he thought I could, I'd be one of his ilk. And I pretended to be. And then when I learned everything he was going to do, I went to the Attorney General of North Carolina. And in their office, there was this lady who was like really didn't like what this guy was doing. So I brought her all the info. And so when we had the big meeting of the state and the county and the NEA, and basically I gave her all the info, and then she basically had this highway patrol there, and he was about to announce what he was going to do. And the minute he opened his mouth and said what he was going to do, she announced that she was going to arrest him right there and then for money laundering and mail fraud and you name it, and she was going after him. And so then I stood up and said, "Hey, we don't have to go there. We have this thing called the Artist Trust, and it's duly part of the Black community. It's on its board, and we can step in right in the middle and turn this into a win-win, which is what we did. And we ran that whole scene for a year. But what happened was the rich people just sat back and waited, and we organized and got it running nicely. And then when it was running, we weren't, I was one guy who could administrate it, but I didn't want to. And the rest of the people, I just kind of dragged them into doing it, and they didn't want to. And then the, what's her name, who became mayor, she, she was a liberal Democrat, a progressive, And she basically was the face for Moron. And the other guy, and there were 3 other white, wealthy men who wanted to rule and run Nashville, and turned it into the hipster jungle it is today. Right? And what was her name? Nice Jewish girl, became mayor. And now she's, working at Walmart or something because she wasn't their class of people. She did their bidding, but was not their class of people. And everyone, occurred. So this was going to be their great little place. Didn't turn out that way. And I had a lot of friends who actually, you should buy a couple of houses. We can buy anything in Nashville for, 15, 20 grand. And so they got their little house or 2. And now they rent it out for $3,000 or $4,000 a weekend to anyway. And I never went there. I never because I didn't have the 15 or 20 grand. And I remember taking my dad into Asheville and began to say, Dad, why don't we buy some of these houses? You can buy some of these for 3 and 4 grand a piece. He'll be, oh, they're crap, they're blah, 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 blah. And that's my dad. He always was right, but he wasn't, in his own mind, as my brother would say, his own reality. So anyway, that's what's happening around here. This, for 20 years that I lived here, it was a pretty amazing place. And that lady that we talked to, oh, I've been here 5 years, and she really thinks it was great. And now it's like really changing because of, big money people coming in and buying up everything. And now she has something to lose. I have nothing to lose. When you have nothing, you really can be appreciative. And so here's where I'm going to say, hey, why don't you send me something on PayPal? I haven't seen any money in there for at least a month. And, my car is about, front end is about to fall off. I need $400 to fix that. I don't have it. I have like $90 for the next 3 weeks, Let us see what is coming. That's interesting. Remedy Coin Report. So people send me interesting stuff. Kind of. Weather therapy.
Well, this is a harmonizer. And, my attempt at making one anyway. A guy named Slim Sperling devised making something akin to this and using it for reducing the geopathic stress in the atmosphere. So what this show is going to be devoted for is to make a recording that you can play at your home, or place of work, wherever you're really concerned about. And what we're going to attempt to do is to capture the radionic effects of this, and it should give you about a 5-mile radius around you that reduces the effects of the storm. The severe effects. It's not going to stop.
So that's very interesting. So radionics, that word is very important. That was Tesla technology, and Wilhelm Reich, and Rudolf Steiner, and a number of other people understood this. People in the Theological Society, Blavatsky, people in the Thule Society understood all of this, and they had flying saucers. They sent a bunch of German engineer scientists to the west of the United States in the 1850s, 60s, right? Just after the Civil War, after California. And they understood about how to locate using radionics, gold, and silver. So the big hits they did, they took their major, winning. They didn't want to be the big name of it. So they got a big chunk of change, and then they got a big chunk of real estate, and they kind of buried it in other entities, and still exist out there, right? And that's where the money for people like the Rad Lab, Stanford University, and Lockheed Aerospace, Hughes Aerospace, folks at Boeing. These are all people who had something to do with these interesting German engineers and bankers. Right? And they had a larger picture of what was going to go on in the world, right? And so they understood all of what's going on now, and they were like setting themselves up. So when you look at entities like the Trilateral Commission and the Council for Foreign Relations and folks over there in the city of London and in the Vatican, these are also radionic spots, right? Where you would douse and find severe. And so where I live in the Deep Green, the number one reason I found that place was energetics, right? It's like, whoa, way off the hook. My little slice of, the ley lines, it goes right to my backyard, comes out of the ground. And the ley line is like 20 foot high, 20 foot wide, and goes down 200 feet. Because I live in a sawtooth mountain range, and so I'm in a hollow. So this like 400-foot chunk of ley line, goes right through my middle of my property. Right, I was going to build a big house right on top of it. Right, and but my whole 4 acres is within inside the heavy, energetics of this. Right, and what's interesting, it has dipoles all around it, so it really focuses it right to where my man cave is. That's why I put it there, and that's why I'm still alive, right? Along with my, looking after my diet and how I am and what I'm doing and all the above. So anyway. So I haven't been on the YouTube for at least 4 or 5 days until last week, because I've had no money to put gas in the tank, or come to Thailand I have to buy a meal, and they can't put it on my plastic, and so anyway, they basically take care of it. So, what else can I tell you? So nobody's dumped anything into my PayPal for.
Stop you from getting rain. It's
Remedy coin report. Joe Baker. Resolving conflict by offering forgiveness. Yep. And that's why, the real big obstacle to peace on earth is that on our planet at this time, love is conditional. You do what I say, and then I love you, right? And within relationships, within families, within governments, within countries, that's the thing that's going on between Russia and Ukraine. It's totally conditional love, and the real and it's the conditional love again. There's only one love, and that's unconditional. So conditional love is an illusion of the ego world, and so all the love that we are coined to respect, religious, the Old Testament, New Testament, Bhagavad Gita, Quran, all these things are based on conditional love. At least not that the religions are based on that. All of those religions are based on co-creation of love, right? That's all of them are. But they've been taken and perverted by political, social, and economic dynamics to control their populations. They're all the same, right? There is very little difference between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, right? They're all books of, you know, what's his name? The head dude who started it all. Not Solomon, whatever his name was. Nice Jewish boy. Anyway, the House of David before, right? So that's where we're at. And this thing in Ukraine, it's just going to get worse and worse. More people are going to die. There is no such thing as good war. And once people like Ukraine and Russia start warring, they are from the same family. They are the same people. And so the people you can get most down and dirty with is the folks who are in your family, right? I'm sure you have a lot of experience with that within your families. And once you give them nasty weapons, jet fighters, tanks, rockets, nuclear weapons. And so basically what's going to happen is someone's going to have a loose shell, and it's going to take out. See, the worst thing was 5 reactors, largest reactor complex in all of Europe, is in the Ukraine, and the Russians went in South Ukraine and took it over, right close to the Black Sea. And it's right there in the corner. If that ever really got nasty, if that did a Fukushima, that would do more harm than what happened in Japan. Because where those things were, they were out in the middle Pacific, kind of far away from everybody but the folk in Japan. But the weather and the water moves towards California, right? So the majority of the real radiation hit America, not Japan. So if those plants were to have a similar thing, and what Fukushima was they didn't have any they lost their backup power. So there was no pumping of water over the fuel ponds and reactor cores. And so the billions of gallons of water that were there in those ponds and in those cores, basically instantly, all of those materials, because there was rushing water going past them, taking away the heat, it got hotter and hotter and hotter, and then it melted everything down. They didn't have a nuclear explosion. What they did was all of that water was splashed into hydrogen and oxygen. So now you had it contained in these buildings, and one little spark, boom. And if you ever saw the pictures of all 4 of those reactors, the buildings blew up. The reactors didn't blow up, but the buildings did. And their cores melted, right? So they basically had uncontrolled nuclear reaction. And so in Fukushima, they're still having to, oh my God, every day, right? And those were reactors that were way smaller than the ones that are there in the Ukraine. And also that were built because of Japan, big earthquakes, everything, the one stupid thing they did, and they just saved a few pennies, they put their backup generators, diesel generators. One guy said, we should put it up on the roof because there's a tsunami, they'll get flooded out. That's exactly what happened. So Russia is now trying to disconnect those reactors from the Ukrainian grid. And if they do that, the one thing they will do is they will disconnect those reactors from a power source that pumps water across those things. So if something goes wrong and that water stops flowing, you're going to have a Fukushima in all 4 or 5 of those reactors, and each of them is like at least twice, if not 10 times bigger than what the Fukushima reactors were. So you have a release of radiation of that level. It won't be a nuclear explosion. It will just be a dirty experience. And it will, Chernobyl, well, it didn't have, see, the thing about Chernobyl was it was a graphite-mediated reactor, whereas these reactors are mediated by water flowing over the cores, right? So the real issue happened at, so these reactors, their cores are highly packed with radioactive material, very tight, very tight. Well, the Chernobyl, not so much. They were the reactor cores were as big as a football field, and they were being mediated by carbon, the same kind of carbon that's in a lead pencil. And so what happened was it got really hot, and it caught that carbon on fire. It couldn't be put out. When you pour water on it, it would just bubble and steam and put more stuff in the atmosphere. So they basically had to cover it up in concrete while the fire was still going. And it's still, parts of it are still bubbling and trickling along. So the 5 reactors that are in harm's way in Ukraine could do the same thing, but worse, because they have water-mediated reactors, and so there's a lot more radioactive material there, and it's a lot more concentrated. And if they were to have a similar hydrogen-oxygen explosion, a chemical explosion of that material, it would be thrown up into the upper atmosphere all over a planet. So, good luck with that. In Japan, they at least have the whole Pacific to go over, right? And when I was a young lad in the 60s, I hitchhiked everywhere, and I rode the rails. And I once rode the rails straight across the continent, right, from Massachusetts into Chicago, Chicago into LA. And then I kind of went all over the place, and I went up the West Coast Highway. I think it's, I don't know what number it is, but anyway, the one that goes up the coast, and it's beautiful, and it goes all the way up into Canada, and then goes along the coast, and that's the most beautiful part, along the Canadian coast up into Alaska. And so I spent a good 4 or 5 months going along that, going into little towns, saying, well, can I work here? Can I fix that? Can I do this? And I'd stick around in this town for 3 or 4 weeks, and go to this town for 3 or 4 weeks. And some people would send me on to their brother-in-laws or whatever. And, a good, almost a year and a half, that trip I took, right? And that was in the 68, right after I graduated high school. I just took that trip, got out of town, got tired of doing what I was doing, wanted to try something totally different, because, when I was in high school, I went to this school, the Washington School for Boys. I went to a school for the richest people on the planet, right? Eddie Merrill, Ricky Lynch, UB Hobart, Alex Orr, Perry Dye, who ran my own Seagrams. My sophomore year roommate was a guy named Joe Kennedy, Robert Kennedy's middle son, who became, I think, a congressman. But he used to get upset with me because he goes, "You read too many books, man," because I would read into the night. I had my little reading light, and he said, go to sleep, Because what he wanted me to do was go to sleep so he could masturbate, right? And so I, by around 1 o'clock, I'd turn the light off and I'd turn it over, and he couldn't wait. So he would start whacking off within 10 minutes. I just pretend I was, because I used to snore. And so I would, snore, and he just pretend I was snoring, and then wait till he was about to come home. Joe, what are you doing over there? What are you doing? And I almost did it every freaking night. That is how dense that boy was, And that's how dense most of those really super rich kids were, Now Perry Dye and Alex Orb and Eddie Merrill, Ricky Lynch, and what's his name, Austin Hearst. These are all guys who went to school with. They were not rocket scientists, And they had no real sense of anything except I'm entitled to whatever I want. Right? Pretty much. And a lot of those kids were so past that they realized that this world was not fair or righteous. Or, how come I have everything and nobody else has anything? There were a few kids who actually thought that way. Not Eddie Merrill and Ricky Lynch. Alex Orb, his family owned like U.S. Steel. Perry Dye's family, and they were just party family. And even Austin Hearst, but Austin was so, from his family. And, it was right about the time his older sister, Patty, had that whole thing going down. So anyway, that was my high school experience. So when I graduated high school and I was supposed to go off to theater school, which I had already, spent 4 years, or even more. I started being Mr. Disco when I was 16, And I worked for Herbert Berghoff Studios, pretty well famous Herbert Berghoff and Uta Hagen, HP, and worked for the Living Theater and I was Lester Polakoff's best boy, who was like the head set and lighting designer for Broadway and Lincoln Center. And the lady who was on the board of Lincoln Center and Julie Arsh. I mean, these are all the buds, you know. They look at me as like,
good back here?
you know, as, oh, this guy's cool, right? So when I went up to theater school, I was already doing the job that I was supposed to. All of my, you know, at college stuff, all my professors were jealous of me because I had the job they wish they had, and they weren't even, this was in the 60s, and they weren't even tenured professors, you know. They were making nothing, and they weren't doing what they wanted to do, and, you know, they were just, so when I left that, I just hit the road, you know. Told no one where I was going. I just jumped the train, you know, went down to the yard and took the first train that was heading west, you know. Had no real idea where it was going. And it, you know, ended up in Chicago. I got out. I had a buddy in Chicago, went and knocked on his door, and he said, "Oh." That was Freddie. Freddie was Palestinian, right? And I worked in Vista with him. Right? We ran a club up, not a club, well, it was a club, but it was a boys' athletic league camp for kids from New York City, young men, the really poor white, Hispanic, and black kids. You know. And we took over this camp, and it had, you know, it was right when all the riots were going on, right when Martin Luther King got assassinated. And we decided that we weren't going to be black, Hispanic, or white. We would just be Indians. So we took all our clothes off. We had little loincloths, and we ran around barefooted. And, you know, and we had 4 different groups. The oldest, you know, 16-year-olds, the 13-year-olds, and the 12 to 9-year-olds, and 9 to like 6. And so the first group is like, wanted to kill us. That's like 300 of them and only 16 of us. And we said, no, listen. Well, this is your camp, not ours. We'll do whatever you want. We'll just front you. We'll just do what you want. And that's when we decided all to be Indians. And so, and so there's a thing called best camp. So in that trip, you pick 3 or 4 guys who were best campers, and then they would be, you know, assistants to us, right? And so, you know, they would become. So anyway, what we decided to do was that if those kids at least didn't kill us and didn't burn the place to the ground, and did what, you know, got into doing whatever they wanted to do, we would let them be there for the next trip. And so by the time we had the 4th group, that's 4 times 300 boys, we had 1,200 boys. The more kids we got, the more organized, the more better. And because the oldest then took care of the group younger than them, and then them, and we just had the best of time. All these, you know, 1,200 little boys went around, you know, in loincloths and bare feet and you know, feathers in their hair. And we didn't even stay in the bunkhouses because we had so many kids. We kind of banned out into Bear Mountain and made camps all over the place. And the Highway Patrol thought it was the best thing. The, you know, the guys at the U.S. Army Military College, West Point, they gave us support. All those guys would come and help us, right? And whereas the organization, Boys Athletic, they had lost it. Right, and so, they, you know, after and why it went the way it went, why those boys went forward, one was the guy who was supposed to be the head of our camp. Basically, you know, he liked little boys, and he took this one little boy, and they got in the camp car and took the money out of the camp safe, and you know, head for the hills. And so we called up the home office and told them what happened, and that everything was falling apart. Because we had no idea what that camp was and what it should be. And the guy said, "We don't want to hear from you again. Just you take care of it." So we did. We did it our way. And it was truly an amazing, one of the better summers I ever had. And so that's how I knew Freddie. He was the most streetwise. He and I were the two streetwise guys. Rest, not so much. So I knocked on Freddie's door, and there he was, and he invited me in. And he was running his parents' restaurant, and he had his own nice little place. And I stayed there a couple of weeks. Got involved with Lebanese Palestinian community there, and then I his uncle was also a hobo, and he goes, "I'm going to L.A. To try out for the movies. You want to go?" And I said, "Sure." So we ran the rails and we went Chicago down to New Orleans, and then bounced up towards Las Vegas, and then into L.A. And it was great, and that was 69, 70. And after that little 2-week trip, I made it back to New York, and the lady who ran Juilliard said, "Oh, you need to, the draft board has been bugging me back here. I'm gonna keep coming back here on sabbatical. So I really need to come looking for me." But I did have to pop up to a university to just clear her name, so I filled up in Juilliard for about 6 months. And that was fun. I met a lot of great people. But again, I was not going to matriculate to that school. So, but I was already working. None of my classmates were working. And so, and then I got sent to Harvard, and I was there again for a little bit more time, and then I skipped, right? And I went down to North Carolina and was a photojournalist for Headline Enterprise, right? And I kept doing stuff like that my whole life, right? I've never stayed in any one place for real long time. I mean, New York was always my home base. I could always go there and make money and be connected and be the dude. But I moved on. So when they came looking for me the third time, and I stayed in one place too long, and I got a certified letter saying you better show up to your draft board. So I did, and that's when they said, "Oh, I was ready to take, wait online in my underpants," and they said, no. You go upstairs, see Sergeant York." And so I went up there and saw him, and he had a big box of my file, all the different places they were looking for me and finding me. He goes, you're harder to find than where's Waldo. Anyway, he goes, Al, we don't think we can trust you with a gun. I said, really? You can't. And he goes, what we'd like to do is give you alternative service. I was working in that camp anyway. I did all this social service kind of stuff when I was in high school. I mean, main reason because it always had really interesting hot women running with these things, and they liked the fact that I knew what I was doing, and I could really help them out instead of being stupid. So, let me run it. I'd say, no, let me help you. Let me make you look good. Let me make you happy. So, and that's been my career with women. Let me make you happy. Anyway, and when guys, I don't understand guys at all, why they wouldn't want to make their woman happy. It's like, when a woman's happy, the house is happy. So anyway, I went off, and first I worked for Vista, Volunteers in Service to America, and they sent me down to Mississippi to be a teacher, and I just was like stirring up too much trouble, so most people didn't want to see me, and so they sent me back to New York, and I went to work at the VA at Fort Hamilton, and I was just a bedpan guy, right? Wearing a Hawaiian shirt, wearing sunglasses, cowboy boots, and shorts, and one day the head colonel who ran everything walked in and said, hey, you're going to be my protege. I said, what? He said, yep, you're going to be my protege. I said, what? He said, do I have to say it a third time? I said, I guess not. So anyway, I worked for him, and he sent me off for 3 years studying alternative medicine. You know, that's what I went to a place in Ohio, the last osteopath school, and I learned osteopathness, and you learn kinesiology, and then he sent me off to a Chinese doctor where I learned Chinese herbs and acupuncture, and then I was sent to a Shinto priest in Putney, Vermont, helped him start his Hanbu. I spent a year there, and I came back, and we built all kinds of protocols because we'd have all these kids coming from Vietnam. They get blown up in Vietnam. They would be put on an airplane, flown to either Germany or someplace in Asia, Philippines, and then the Philippine guys would go to the West Coast, the guys who went to Germany went to the East Coast. And every time they'd be on that airplane ride for about a 12-hour ride, they would just hook them up to morphine so they wouldn't act up. And so by the time they got to us, they'd have no limbs and they'd be junkies. So we had to deal with, and they'd be totally traumatized. So we had to deal with the trauma, had to deal with the addiction, had to deal with them being without limbs. And we made some serious protocols that, especially the acupuncture, we could get people off of drugs like that. There's a little point in your ear. If you put a hearing there, the physical need in the opiates goes away. The emotional need, the psychological need, those things are different. So anyway, we built some great profiles. And my boss was going to DC. We'd been working on this for 3 years. We had about 1,000 people that we had run through this protocol. It was so much better than anything else the government was doing with these guys. And so he was heading to DC for this congressional hearing, and he was run off the road, and he's trying to crawl out of the car, and they shot him in the head, and then they put him back in the car and set the car on fire, and it just kind of crisped him. It didn't really burn him, so he had an autopsy, and they brought the body back to our hospital, and he said, this guy, our leader was taken from us. The car crash was obviously, you can see the car was pushed off the road. You can see where he tried to get out of the car. You can see the bullet hole in his head. And then you can see his body being stuffed back in the car. So these are all, things you could look at forensically and say, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And so that, he made this report, but then some other people came in and shushed him out. He kept a copy. They said, you got to give us everything you had. So he gave them everything he had except the copy he had. And, that was the name of the story. And so it's very, at a very early age, I saw what was going on in the world. And it's still going on. Everything that's going on now, nothing has changed. Nothing is worse. In actuality, it's better because of social media. It's so out there in your face that it's like, but nobody wants to see it. They want to be in their own little silo. Want to believe their own little, this conspiracy theory or that. No, guys, open your eyes. Make the conspiracy a little bit bigger. Except the Democrats are terrible. Earlier on, this lady was, it's Democrats, and I tried to explain to her how everything is. Anyway, so that's the story. I've been on here for an hour and 40 minutes. I have to get on to my next place of visiting. And I don't know when I'm going to do this again because I have no money. So come on, put something in the PayPal. Really? You can't put anything. It's like, you have a job. I haven't had a job in the last 7 years, 10 years, right? And to sell everything I have, right? So I'm living on $400 a month. Can you do that? Right? Can you take everything that you do and do it in service to love co-creation? Let's see you do that. Let's see you be your best. I'd love to see you be your best. Can you be your best? I don't know if you can. Yeah, I'm gonna go.
Yeah, you're a mean girl. I knew you were a mean girl.
So anyway, that's it. Let's see, how much we got? 88%. Yeah, okay. So everything, I think everybody is in a pretty good state. I'm gonna get out of here now. Oh, yes, right about now. Hey, I love you. Hope you enjoyed those jig jags of the story. And who owns you, baby? Who owns you?